Welcome to your NFL Week 4 reaction. It's Mitch of TheBottomLineView, here to give you my thoughts on each and every game this Sunday in the NFL, including Sunday Night Football. And that's where I want to start. But first, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, man, for weekly NFL reactions every Sunday, just like this. And the plan is to react before Sunday Night Football. But the reason I'm here sitting at night after Sunday Night Football, after the Ravens hammered the Buffalo Bills, I'm sitting here and I'm digesting what I just witnessed because I was actually halfway through my recording for this video. But I had a fantasy draft, a hockey fantasy draft. Then I had a mouse loose in my basement. And then the Bills game was going on. So I figured might as well just react to all of it and give it to you guys straight. And where I want to start is the Sunday Night Football game. Because I kind of can believe what I'm seeing, but I also can't believe it. The Buffalo Bills have lost one game since 2021 by more than one score. The game is almost over now. It's not even over yet. I'm already recording this video. That tells you how the game went. And it looks like the Bills are going to lose by not just double digits, but by more than 20 points. And it's a classic Ravens from last year turn back the clock performance. It's a vintage Lamar Jackson in primetime, Derrick Henry in primetime. But it also, in my opinion, speaks to a larger point about the NFL right now. The Bills look like the best team in the NFL through 3 weeks, or at least in the discussion for the best team in the NFL with the best player in the NFL. And I still would say, overall, Josh Allen has been the best player in the NFL this year. And I think he will be that for the rest of the year. Every team loses. And I have this comment come up every week of the season. Every week. It's like, oh, you said this team was the best, or this team was one of the best, or this team was ranked over this team. And it's like, yeah, I got to make rankings every week. I got to update my opinion every week on these teams. Sometimes I'm right, and those teams stay at the top. Sometimes I'm wrong. And this year, it just so happens that I'm more wrong than I'm right. And that's just the way the NFL season has been this year. It's been absolutely brutal for consistency and for elite play in all areas: offense, defense, quarterback, coaching, and team. And in combination with that, we see spots and we see momentum impacting games more than really any other year that I can recall. Like, just take the Ravens in general, man. Like, the Ravens, they come out here and they beat the Bills handily, easily, comfortably. They lost to the Raiders in a spot where they were up big. And there was a point in this game against the Bills where they could have maybe done the same, where they let go of that grasp of this game. But it just so happens that the Buffalo Bills were intent on losing this game against the Ravens. They called one of the worst plays at the worst moments of the game that you've ever seen. Joe Brady calls a Curtis Samuel wildcat pass to Josh Allen, in which Josh Allen gets the ball and then is immediately berated by Kyle Van Noy to the point where he's strip sacked. And I think there might have been a player down the field open. But with the momentum and the way that the game was going, I think it was 21-10. Bills had the ball around that fringe field goal range. I think it was first down, or it might have been second, right? And they called that play at that point in the game. Just made no sense. And this game was very much about momentum. And I think it speaks to what I'm trying to get across when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings. And we're going to talk about the Vikings because I think the Vikings were the story of Sunday along with this Sunday nighter with the Ravens. Because I think the Ravens just fed off of home field, Sunday Night Football, big opponent. No one thinks we can really win despite us being favored. and it being a spot for the Ravens to come out and perform at their best and put together their most complete game of the year by a long shot. And Derrick Henry, that Derrick Henry momentum of him breaking off big runs and can't be tackled. What we saw against Dallas, it carried through against Buffalo. The Bills just not having enough response early in the game for Baltimore. And just overall, the Ravens completely outcoaching the Bills by a mile. Like, not even particularly close. So when we look at the grasp of the NFL, we just see an inconsistency to a level of, we don't know who to rely on. We don't know which teams are good. Like, outside of the Chiefs being 4-0, nothing else has really been consistent about the NFL. And the Chiefs are 4-0, but we'll get to the Chiefs later on. It's even hard for us to consistently say that the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL because of how they actually are playing in the games that they're playing and the games that they're winning, right? So I'm going to be all over the place in this review, but I'm just giving you my honest opinions on these games, honest opinion on the NFL right now. And there's just a lot of bad product, and there's just a lot of inconsistency. And we see that in Sunday Night Football, where I thought the Ravens played a great game. You have to give a ton of credit to the Ravens. I think Derrick Henry, that addition, finally really shined through. Of course, it did last week. He played well against Dallas. But Dallas, we knew, was a flawed football team. We knew that Dallas was susceptible to the run. You know, we thought the Bills, like, the one thing I thought the Ravens could capitalize on against the Bills was the run defense of Buffalo, the light bodies, right? Being bigger, being stronger, being the more powerful team. It does help that there was rain added to this game that I think definitely favors the Ravens. But, you know, the Ravens dominate. 5 for 9 on third down, 22 first downs to 12, 427 yards, 271 of them on the ground, to the point where Lamar Jackson only has to complete 13 passes and have 158 yards, and the Ravens comfortably control this game. And like I said, there was a point in the game where it felt like Buffalo could have made this really interesting and perhaps a one-score game to the finish, where if the Bills don't get strip sacked on that crazy, stupid play call and trick play, it probably is at least 21-13, and then we're talking about a game for like the rest of the game probably. But that swapped momentum. The Ravens are able to capitalize on that, get once again that lead, kind of take that momentum out of Buffalo, and then you could almost immediately tell the momentum changes in this game. Like, it was such a weird game to watch, man. Like, just in terms of the momentum, you could see, like, Buffalo started to gain steam at one point. It looked like, oh, is Baltimore going to let another lead slip? And then once as that play just took place again, like, it immediately went back to the same game we were watching the first quarter, where the Ravens were able to take back control of the game. And I think that speaks to, like, environment, spot, situation, home field, prime time, big opponent, ready to go. Ravens were ready to go. Bills were not. Bills got out physicaled. Bills got out techniqued. Bills got out game planned. I mean, the Ravens secondary looked phenomenal tonight. They really didn't let anyone get open. You were watching early in the game, the Ravens continuously, like, picking apart the Bills at the second level. Like, Lamar had guys running wide open early in the game off of play action, wide open. It looked like the Chiefs and Bills in the divisional round last year, to the point where Mahomes had guys running wide open, like shot plays over the middle, shot plays. Lamar had guys wide open. It's like, oh, there's the Bills defense from the playoffs last year. And then slowly but surely, they're giving up the run. They're conceding the run. It's adding to the pass. And then Henry hits big runs. He hit a big one early. He hit a big one later. He had 199 yards on 24 carries, 8.3 yards per carry. An absolute animal contest from Derrick Henry. And that really allowed, Lamar to be very comfortable and honestly did not do very much in this game. He had a couple scrambles, a couple runs. He scored a touchdown on a run. He had 2 passing touchdowns. Like, he had the 3 touchdowns in the game, but this was not like a Lamar superstar MVP performance with 156 yards through the air and 18 attempts. Like, this was truly an overpowering up front, a great game plan from the Ravens defense, a very underwhelming plan from both Sean McDermott defensively and Joe Brady offensively. I'm not sure what happened to all the motion and pre-snap motion from the Bills in previous games. We didn't see that in this game. We didn't see the Bills being able to, throw the football with consistency, run the football with consistency. They just never had control of this game. As soon as Derrick Henry hit that home run right off the bat, the Bills were just not able to take control. And that Ravens crowd, that Ravens primetime atmosphere, there was a lot of energy in this one from the fan base. You got to give them credit there. They kind of got this Ravens team going, and that's just been this Ravens team in this era of Lamar. They just have this energy. It's infectious, and they're very hard to beat. They're very hard to stop when they get going like this, and when they're playing from ahead, and when they're able to blitz. And the Bills couldn't pick up blitzes later in this game. Josh Allen had no chance. Early in the game, it felt like they couldn't really separate. Nobody was getting open. Shakir got banged up in the game. Kincaid got a bit banged up in the game. They weren't able to consistently make plays. And later in the game, it felt like the Ravens were able to blitz them from every angle, and Josh was instantly under pressure and just not able to do anything with it. Honestly, could you say Lamar outplayed Josh in this game? Yes, but if you're really watching the game from a schematical standpoint, one staff had such a great plan. They played the way they wanted to from the jump. They continued that play throughout the game. There was one little stumble where the Bills almost made it interesting. And then the Ravens just completely just exploited Buffalo down the stretch of this game. And I'm not really going to say that I'm worried about Buffalo. I think they'll bounce back from this game. This was a tough game to win. The Ravens were favored for a reason. It was a tough spot, despite how good the Bills have looked, right? They were kind of due for a down game. They were due for a bit of a momentum loss. The Ravens were desperate for a win, being that they're 1-2. If you drop to 1-3, that's a very difficult place to be. Right now, they're 2-2. The Bills are 3-1. It just makes logical sense from that standpoint. But it also didn't make a lot of sense when you're watching it because, again, we've seen it so many times this NFL season. Teams just flip their identities. Teams look so different from what we've seen previously. The Ravens were covering better than they had covered all year. They were getting pressure better than they had gotten pressure all year. They were stopping the run, which is something they have done consistently. They were running the ball, which is something they have done consistently. But early in the game, it felt like their passing game was more effective than anything we've seen from them previously. Maybe that was set up due to the run game. It was weird how the Bills were trying to play the Ravens early in the game. Very soft coverages, kind of allowing the Ravens to dictate the tempo, the pace, the aggression. And I thought once the Bills tried to switch that game plan to a defensive, aggressive game plan, it made it a little bit tighter, a little bit more interesting. The Ravens at least had to work for their yards, work for their plays. Early in the game, the Ravens were just screening the Bills to death, underneath passes, play action passes. It was way too easy for the Ravens. The Bills were not tackling. They just didn't appear to be the Bills team we had seen previously. And the offense just wasn't working. The horizontal passing game, the way that we had seen previously, or the running game the way that we had seen previously. And too much in this game, I felt was on Josh Allen. Almost every play that the Bills made was because of Josh Allen making a great throw, or Josh Allen making a great scramble to throw, or something to that degree, like the one to Shakir, or a couple back shoulders to Coleman. And the difference in this game to me was that, both teams have great quarterbacks, both teams have top 5 quarterbacks, but the one team that came out and had a better game plan defensively, a better game plan offensively, understood how they wanted to play this game from the jump, they took over, and Lamar didn't have to do, a ton in order to control and to win this game. And that to me is the story, is one of these inept Bills coaching staff games, and just a Bills team that looked like they were overconfident. They weren't ready to play this big spot game. The Ravens were. They took it to the Bills, and it ends up being 35-10 in the second double-digit loss since 2021 for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. That will definitely slow down the MVP buzz for Allen, but I don't necessarily think it will kill it by any means, just given how the rest of the NFL looks from an MVP standpoint. I mean, who are you really giving it to right now? You're probably not giving it to Mahomes. You're probably not giving it to Sam Darnold, despite how well he's played, unless you throw in, maybe a guy like Brock Purdy can get into this thing if they go on a roll or something like that after how he's been playing. If Lamar can somehow, and he just won one, so it's kind of hard for him to win, but if he somehow goes on a tear here, it's hard to say because the quarterback play here has not been fantastic this season, right? Even Mahomes, now Allen has a stumble block. Who is really that MVP player that's going to take this from Allen this year? I do think Burrow has played really well the last 2 weeks, but one of those games kind of included a loss, right? And Stroud hasn't been overwhelming despite a 3-1 start, although he did have a better statistical day today, so maybe Stroud could provide some competition. But the MVP conversation is interesting. The best teams in the NFL conversation is interesting. We'll get to that once we get to power rankings, man. But this game, I just felt like the Ravens overpowered the Bills. They were better prepared, and they made less mistakes. And I just think, a lot of people will be like, oh, Lamar beat Allen. That's not really what this game was about to me. This game was more about the story of the NFL so far this year, the randomness of the results, the randomness of the effort, and then on top of that, the game planning of the Ravens and the real Ravens standing up in terms of this is who they are at their best. Running the football, little bit of play action, little bit of Lamar running, good secondary play, tight coverage, along with collective, really calculated blitzes. So Ravens win 35-10. Congratulations, huge victory. That gets them right back into this thing in the AFC North. Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings now, a team that I have honestly disrespected through the first couple of weeks of the season because I just was not willing to accept what I've seen with my eyes and willing to accept the results. And that is beating the Niners. I'm not going to include the Giants. I predicted that to happen. That was pretty obvious. The Giants are not a very good team. The Vikings beating the Giants, even in New York, is not all that surprising, regardless of what you thought of the Vikings. Okay, so you throw that game out. The Niners game, slightly shocking, but you go back to last year, you're like, well, the Vikings weren't great last year. They beat the Niners. Maybe this is a matchup thing. And that was kind of my logic. So we're going to work my way through my logic, right? Week 1. Impressive game. Defense looked good. I think the defense is going to be pretty good. I like Brian Flores. I like Kevin O'Connell. Okay, Darnold was fine, but he was playing the Giants. Okay, so that's after week 1. Week 2, they beat the Niners, but the Niners had a lot of yards. They had like 450 yards, 420 yards. They failed a couple fourth downs. That game was pretty tight. If the Niners convert a fourth down, maybe the Niners find a way to win. They don't have McCaffrey, right? Guys are getting hurt left and right on the Niners. Like, things are wrong with the Niners. They don't seem in sync. So is this really the Vikings, or is this just a team that's better prepared? A team that really well coached and obviously matches up well with the Niners. They're at home as well. So that's kind of my logic after week 2. I'm impressed. They beat the team that I thought was the best in the NFL after week 1 against the Jets, but I wasn't really about to crown them. Then after week 3, it's like, okay, they beat the Texans, and it was a lot more convincing than they beat the Niners. Like, even the way that they were leading against the Niners for the entire game, and they never let go of that lead, the game still had a little bit of contention. Then you look at the Texans game, another team that I think is good, and I still think is good. They're 3-1 now. They were 2-0 entering that game. That's also at home, but the Vikings were able to lead from the front, capitalize on mistakes, make the Texans make a lot of mistakes, and then be able to control the entire game on all fronts. And it was less of a, this happened and that happened, because the Texans didn't gain all the yards the Niners did. The Texans didn't have those fourth downs that were kind of interesting, right? That kind of dictated the game. So you're kind of looking at the Niners and Texans games a little bit differently. And now this week, after this week, I had the Vikings, I think, at 5 in my power rankings. I thought that was pretty fair based on preseason expectation, based on they're an underdog going into Green Bay this week, based on, okay, what I've seen with my eyes, they're undefeated, but there's questions still. Less questions after the Texans game, but still some questions about if they can keep this up. Green Bay, a team that I really thought was playing well after week 2 and week 3. Jordan Love's coming back. Maybe there's going to be some issues with Jordan Love coming back, but you still think the Packers at home should be able to beat their rival, right? Well, this game starts, and the Vikings are up 28-0, and they look like the exact same team they looked like against the Texans. Really schematically sound defense, confusing. Jordan Love, another Shanahan-inspired offense. Love is making bad throws and poor decisions, but is that because of Love or is that because of Flores and the defense and how good this pass rush has been, how calculated these blitzes are, how tight the coverage is, especially in the middle of the field? And they actually, one of the interceptions that was caused early in the game was, I think, because of how good the coverage was. Like, a lot of people would say it was a bad decision by Love, and it probably was. And it actually ends up getting Christian Watson injured and a high ankle sprain for Christian Watson, which is going to hurt the Packers. But it's because there was like 2 or 3 collapsing Vikings onto Watson, and it was a suicide pass. Like, it no wonder the guy got hurt. Like, you could immediately tell there's 3 converging Vikings on one receiver trying to catch this ball in the middle of the field. But that's exactly what Flores' defense does. It forces these tight windows. It forces these dicey decisions. It forces these tight window throws that are hard to complete on these money concepts of this offense. And that was, to me, like a big banner type of play in this game. But it's 28-0, and then you're like, oh, this is going to be easy. The Vikings are going to take care of business. And then all of a sudden, like, the Packers score 3 straight touchdowns. It's a 1-score game. Then the Vikings are able to score a field goal. Packers get another touchdown, and then they have an onside kick to determine the game, and they lose 31-29. And that's not even to mention that the Packers miss 2 field goals. If the Packers make 1 field goal, they win this game, never mind 2 field goals. So it kind of puts into perspective, once again, this NFL with this momentum thing that I was talking about in the Ravens game. Like, the momentum this year has been so wild. We even saw it in the Alabama-Georgia game in college football. Like, momentum in this sport right now is just running wild and rampant this weekend. But it's crazy to the point where the Packers outgained the Vikings by nearly 100 yards. They had 2 more first downs. They were pretty much identical on third down, 4 for 12, 4 for 11. Fourth down efficiency, Vikings 0 for 1, Packers 0 for 2, and that was maybe the determining factor in the game. Packers actually had more sacks. Packers did have the turnovers, though, and the negative plays, which has been a staple of the Vikings. And so when we look at and we reflect on what's been successful for the Vikings, I think it's been accurate, precise, and not too aggressive quarterback play. Darnold's made the throws when he's needed to make them. He makes the game-breaking, back-breaking, I should say, scramble when needed. He makes the accurate pass on time when needed. He extends plays when needed. And when he hits his back foot, he's been very mechanically sound, very on point. His receivers are coming through. In this game, Jordan Addison, I think he had a touchdown, maybe 2 touchdowns in this game. And Justin Jefferson comes through at the end of the game to seal the game with a catch. He also has a touchdown in this game. Sam Darnold, 20 for 28, 275, 3 touchdowns. Did have a pick. I think he also might have fumbled as well later in this game. So there was moments of Darnold kind of showing off his Jets version. But when we talk about Darnold, we talk about the comparison to Geno Smith, because I think him and Geno are very similar. People will bring up Baker, but I don't think that's a really good comparison because Baker was actually good in Cleveland at one point. Like, Darnold was never very good in New York. Did he show flashes as a player? Did he show flashes in Carolina as a player at times? Yes, but it was very brief. And he showed the talent that we saw in college, but he never showed a complete game. Now we're seeing Sam Darnold after a year of resurrection in San Francisco, in an offense that he understands, he gets. And, he's even kind of credited Brock Purdy to the way that Brock Purdy studies and kind of handles the offense and understands the grasp of the offense. And we're seeing that in San Francisco right now. We'll talk about that later. But Sam Darnold appears to be a different quarterback because he's simply more mature. Some guys take longer to mature, right? Darnold was very young entering the NFL. He's the same age as me. And I totally could understand why he struggled early in his career, because I know that if I was in his position, I probably would have struggled as a quarterback at that point in life too. Like, just from a mental kind of handling pressure, especially in New York, like the grasp of an NFL like season, NFL pressure, NFL playbook, like that's a lot to handle for a young kid. So I totally understand it. And then you throw into the fact that he was not coached very well offensively. He wasn't given a great system around him. He wasn't given great playmakers or a great offensive line around him. So much about this is surroundings. Now in Minnesota, good offensive line, good weapons, best receiver in football, arguably, right? Good running game that can keep you on schedule. Aaron Jones in this game, once again, revenge game, 22 carries, 93 yards, 4.2 yards per carry. Like, Aaron Jones did Aaron Jones things in this game once again. And again, Sam Darnold, he just looks like a guy that's always had talent, that's put pieces together mentally. And he has more confidence, and he has people around him that believe in him. And that matters a lot. And so the Vikings defense, very good in the first half, did kind of fall apart in the second half. The Packers got it going. The Packers came back. They got the momentum. But Packers don't have a kicker. They need to solve that. Packers, Jordan Love has been too inconsistent in the 2 games that we've seen him. And he was coming back from injury in this game. It took him a while to get into this game. And he looked very, very razzled and frazzled early. But once he got comfortable, he looked like the guy we thought he would be. That being said, I'm not too worried about the Packers moving forward. This is obviously a good Vikings team. The Packers are sitting at 2-2. It's not backbreaking, as we know. I think the Packers' running game needs to be better. We need to see more from the running game. We need to see more balance from this offense. Secondly, I think we need the defense to be more consistent. Pass rush to be more consistent. Run defense to be more consistent. Coverage to be more consistent. And I honestly would have picked the Vikings to win this game if I knew Jair wasn't going to play. Like, that was a huge difference maker, because to me, if you have a number 1 corner that can somewhat slow down Jefferson, it's such a huge difference maker in playing the Vikings, because then that at least forces the Vikings to do other things other than just throw to the best receiver in the league continuously on third down and to get drives started. Like, it's such a difference maker in the red zone. So, and especially how Alexander has played Jefferson, that changes things. So I probably would have picked the Vikings. Obviously, I can't go back to Wednesday and change my pick. But I think what we realized in this game is, like, maybe Love just wasn't quite ready early. But I think the Packers showed enough later in this game to say, hey, they're a hardworking team. They're going to fight. And I still think they're going to be good. But the Vikings, I think what we've learned is that they're a complete team that makes very few mistakes, whether it be turnovers or penalties, right? When you look at the Texans game, like, we're going to talk about the Texans in general, but the Texans, ton of penalties, ton of mistakes, ton of small things that are making games closer than they should, or against a good team like Minnesota, making themselves look terrible. Because despite the talent, when you make that many mistakes, good teams are going to take advantage and they're going to punish you. And that's what the Vikings did in week 3, right? But Minnesota, they don't have a lot of penalties. They don't have a lot of false starts. They don't have a lot of holdings. Defensively, they don't make a lot of mistakes, right? They don't have a lot of open receivers. They don't miss a lot of tackles. They don't, have a lot of timeouts that are useless, right? Like, the Vikings are very much on their details. They're on their P's and Q's. And that's why I think their coaching staff right now is the best in football, currently doing it in week 4, because they just don't make mistakes and they put their players in positions to succeed. It feels like every week they have an advantage in some way, shape, or form from a coaching perspective. And that's a lot of credit to O'Connell and to Flores. And that combination of, swag from O'Connell and aggression and toughness from Flores. There's a unique mix in the Vikings locker room in terms of how they play fast and physical and how they play from a schematical, fancy, flavor standpoint. Feels like they've got a good mix of both worlds. And I'm fully willing to accept now, after 4 weeks, that the Vikings are a contender in the NFC. Would I say that I'm going to pick them to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl? Probably not. Probably not. I still don't know if I can grasp Sam Darnold winning the Super Bowl or winning the NFC. But I will say, if the Vikings are in the NFC Championship, just as they were with a guy like Case Keenum once upon a time, would I be shocked? Absolutely not. I think when you look at this team, you see a top 3 defense. I think you see a good offensive line. I think you see a great receiving core. And they'll get TJ Hawkinson back at some point. And Jordan Addison looked like Jordan Addison today. You've still got a running back playing really well that's proven to be a great running back in this league. And you've got a quarterback that might not be one of the best in football, but given the scheme he's in and given the players around him in the situation, he's definitely good enough to win games. And Darnold is almost looking like, what Purdy has been for the Niners and things like that, where it's like nobody really expected this guy to be this good, but given the situation, he is this good, if that makes sense. So 31-29, Vikings win it. Packers struggle early. Vikings take control. Packers try to come back. It's not quite enough. Let's move on to the Texans, a team that won 24-20 over Jacksonville. Jacksonville falls to 0-4. And I will say this. A lot of people are going to say, the Texans only beat the Jags by 4. Jags looked terrible against Buffalo. That's how the NFL is, guys. We just discussed Buffalo. They look amazing, like a juggernaut against Jacksonville at home on primetime. Snowball effect, right? Going downhill. Snowball effect, building momentum. Ravens game, opposite for the Bills. They just can't get a grasp. They had a chance, and they messed it up, right? Texans, they're playing a team that's 0-3. Kitchen sink atmosphere, kitchen sink game, throwing everything at Houston. And what does Houston do in this game? They try to lose the game as much as possible, right? Early in the game, they muff a kickoff. It allows Jacksonville to go up 7-0. Very similar to against Minnesota, where Minnesota got an interception very early in the game. They went up 7-0. Now, the difference between Jacksonville as Minnesota and is what I'm pointing out here. A team like Jacksonville could never be Minnesota because Jacksonville is actually bad. Minnesota is proving they're good, right? So you can put together a good performance in one game if you're bad, but consistency proves if you're mediocre or good, right? That's the difference between mediocre, bad, and good is the level of consistency of performance. So Houston muffs it. Jacksonville gets a touchdown. Brian Thomas played a good game, by the way. He had a touchdown here. He had 6 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. He had another good game. He looks like the best weapon on Jacksonville this year. And every time he gets the ball, he looks dangerous. But Houston, the main theme for me watching this team is how frustrating they are. Just look at the stats. Like Houston, 9 more first downs, 26-17. They had 7 for 13, over a 50% third down conversion rate, right? They had 150 more yards passing. More than 150, right? They had 430 total yards. Jacksonville had 313. Why was the game this close? Well, a muffed kick has something to do with it. That's a free touchdown. And then 12 penalties for 93 yards. This team cannot stop taking penalties, especially when it comes to their offensive line. Their offensive line makes so many mistakes every single week. And this is why I say the Texans are winning. They're 3-1, and they're playing C+ Texan football. If they could learn how to not hold, not take a false start, not line up in an illegal formation, this team would be much better than how they look. Not saying their record would be better because they'd still probably lose to Minnesota in Minnesota, but they would probably look a lot sexier than they've looked. But because they're trying to beat themselves with continuous penalties from Laramie Tunsil, who has like 12 penalties already, penalties from Kenyon Green, penalties from Shaq Mason, penalties from everybody on the O-line, right? CJ Stroud will make an amazing play and it'll be called back. Nico Collins will make a great catch. It'll be called back. They'll make a big run. It will be called back. Like, the defense isn't playing that bad on paper in the game when you're watching them with your eyes. But the offense is making so many mistakes and putting this team in so many bad situations and not being able to control the game because they're constantly hurting themselves, right? And it's not even really turnovers. It was against the Vikings, but in this game, it was penalties. You can't have 12 penalties. You can't have 12 penalties consistently. This has been this team every week of the year, and they're still winning, and they win 24-20 thanks to CJ Stroud and Nico Collins. Stroud, 27 for 40, 345, 2 touchdowns. That's why I say Stroud could be MVP, because when you watch this team play, they can't block consistently. Stroud's always running for some sort of lane to try to throw the ball down the field. And Nico Collins, 12 catches for 151 yards and a touchdown. Their running game is really hurting them on early downs. Every time they try to run it, it's rather a negative play or no gain or a very minimal play. I think they need to change their approach on offense to be more of a pass-happy team, to be more spread and shred, to be more, let's get it out. Let's copy what Buffalo's doing. Let's copy what the Ravens are doing. On early downs, let's have more screen passes. Let's have more quick flares. Let's have more like yak plays, what the Chiefs do, right? Like, let's just get ahead of the sticks, and let's not have CJ constantly in 3rd and 12. Because he can make those amazing plays where he steps up, he steps around pressure, he's throwing dots. But we don't want to rely on that because against good teams and good defenses, if a couple of those plays go wrong, like the Vikings game, we're not going to be able to make up for it. Our defense is good, but it's not that good. Like, we can't just completely shut down opponents if we're not in a rhythm and if we're not controlling the game. So the Texans need to be better running the ball. I think they need to get rid of the penalties, and then they can get to the level that we want them to get at. But right now, they're not there. I thought Trevor Lawrence played a better game. I actually thought, his stats weren't very good. 169 yards, 2 touchdowns, 18 for 33. But I actually thought he played pretty well. Like, I'm not going to lie. I thought he made some nice throws. I thought he was mostly accurate. I thought he made some big-time throws down the field. Christian Kirk, I thought, had a pretty good game overall, too. Tank Bigsby hit a big run. ETN was, I think, in and out of this game. He had an injury. The defense for Jacksonville is pretty bad, honestly. Like, their coverage is terrible. They've got to figure something out. They're injured at linebacker. Their D-line was not overly great. Probably the most underwhelming D-line I've seen against the Texans so far. So Jacksonville just appears to be a bad team. But give the Texans credit for beating a team that was going all out to win against a divisional opponent, a team that knows you very well. You're still able to make that thing happen despite trying to beat yourself, but they need to fix some things. Jacksonville, I think they're done for the season. They're a bust. They're not a good team. They're 0-4. They're not going anywhere. Trevor Lawrence looked better in this game, but didn't look great. Doug Peterson, once again, a 4th down call that could have changed the game, that could have potentially won them this game. They go with a QB draw on 4th and short to Trevor Lawrence from empty like he's Cam Newton, and it's stuffed. Horrible play call. The Jacksonville Jags, bad on the offensive line, bad in play calling right now, inconsistent quarterback play, inconsistent hands at receiver, defense is putrid, a lot of issues with Jacksonville. But those are my thoughts on the game. Next up, we've got the Saints and the Falcons, 26-24 Atlanta. This was one where one team got a bunch of big plays from their defense and their special teams, and they were able to capitalize and win. And the other team wasn't able to put together consistent offense until the end of the game, and it was just too late. So that's at least what I saw. New Orleans did have 11 more first downs in this game. They were better on 3rd down. They had more yards. But the difference in the game, they had 11 more minutes of possession as well. A lot of this came in the 3rd and 4th quarter. But the difference in the game was 2 fumbles, I believe, for touchdowns. One by Hodge and one by Troy Anderson. Now, I think the biggest play in the game was the Troy Anderson pick 6. Matt Judon steps in front of a screen, deflects the ball into the air. It's floating in the air. The fast former running back, linebacker, Troy Anderson, runs it in for a touchdown. Anderson looked fantastic in this game when he was playing, by the way. I think he left maybe with an injury. Hopefully he's okay because he looked great. The Falcons defense, I thought, did a great job against the run, as we spoke about. I thought that they were able to do enough on offense, get into field goal range. Younghoe Koo, MVP, the Young Ho, MVP, 58-yard field goal to win it, 53-yard field goal in this game, along with 2 40-yard field goals. He had 4 field goals. They had 2 touchdowns from their defense and their special teams. Taysom Hill had 2 touchdowns for the Saints. But overall, what I saw from this game was I actually continue to see improvement from Kirk Cousins in terms of accuracy, down the field placement, down the field accuracy and timing with Darnell Mooney and Drake London. Drake London had a ton of targets, 6 catches on 12 targets. A little inconsistent, only 50% reception percentage, but Cousins was trying to get the ball down the field to him. And that was a big point of emphasis for this game plan. Saints, once again, they have a good defense. They were missing Demario Davis here, but their secondary played really well for the most part. And Tyler Algier had some nice runs. Bijan was pretty quiet, but overall patient in the running game. They did enough in that area. I thought the Saints somewhat struggled to run the ball consistently with Alvin Kamara, 19 carries, 77 yards, only 4.1 yards per carry. Once again, kind of a underwhelming performance from the running game here 2 weeks in a row against the Eagles and the Falcons without the offensive linemen that they've had. Derek Carr, statistically not a bad day. He did have the interception for a touchdown. He didn't throw a touchdown, but that was kind of like circumstantial. They ran it in with Taysom Hill. He was 28 for 36, which is a high completion percentage, but he didn't make those downfield explosives that Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave have been hitting early in this year. And the Falcons really forced Carr and the Saints to move the ball patiently down the field. And eventually the Saints got rhythm at the end of this game, but they weren't able to make those big plays when they truly needed it. One of the 4th down, lack of conversions there was a big part of the game. So, yeah, I just think Atlanta was able to play the way they wanted. They didn't really have to get too much out of their offense because of those touchdowns coming from defense and special teams. And they played defense the way that they're going to play everybody. Keep the top of the defense, force them to run the ball, force them to throw it short, force them to pick us apart, and then, make those key critical stops in the red zone, on third down, on fourth down. And that's what Atlanta did. Honestly, it wasn't a sexy performance from them, but they got the job done. 2-2 for the Falcons, 2-2 for the Saints. Saints have a huge game on Monday night on the road at the Chiefs. Falcons play a huge game at home Thursday Night Football against the Bucs. Both are huge games. And honestly, I could see those games both going either way. So good luck to those teams. I think the Saints still look to me like a pretty promising potential wild card contender. I think the Falcons, these teams all feel the same level to me. Falcons, Saints, Bucs. Falcons seem to have the edge. Just they beat the Saints. They're healthier than the Saints and the Bucs. And I feel like the Falcons also have a bit of an easier schedule. So we'll see how that works out. But the Falcons get this one against the Saints. Let me know what you guys thought of that game. The Bears and the Rams. This was an interesting one. Bears take it by 6, 24-18. Another upset that I did, or a semi-upset, I guess. It only feels like an upset because it's the Rams versus the Bears. Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford against Caleb Williams and Matt Eberflus. Like, that's a mismatch. But the Bears were actually favored by 3, so they did cover the spread here. But the Rams felt like they were kind of giving this game away early in the game. It felt like they were up 6-0, but they were trying to give it away. Like they could have went up 13-0, 17-0. Somehow they ended up losing this game despite, almost surging at the end. But Stafford made a stupid interception, a stupid throw, I think like near the end zone, if I'm not mistaken. They did have more first downs than Chicago by 4. They were better on third down, 5 for 11, 3 for 9. They had nearly as many rushing yards. They had almost 100 more passing yards. They had 60 more total yards. Both teams had 3 sacks. But basically the difference was that the Rams had one, sorry for kicking my camera. The Rams had 1 interception. The Bears didn't. The Bears did lose a fumble, but the Rams also lost a fumble. So a lost fumble, an interception. And I think the overall difference to me was just that the Rams defense is not as good as the Bears defense. I think we saw here Bears at home, Rams on the road. Defense won this game to me. I thought the Bears defense just made more critical stops, more critical plays, more game-changing negative plays. The Bears, I don't really know how they won. 10 penalties for 84 yards compared to 6 for 44. The Rams had more everything, more time of possession, more first downs, more yards. Other than just defense. And then the Bears punted 5 times. The Rams punted once. It was just one of those games. Home team, Rams coming off of a big win, an upset, comeback against the Niners, emotionally not at the same level. Chicago at home, a little bit more emotion and spark. Caleb Williams didn't make a lot of critical mistakes, although he didn't play very well. I didn't think he looked very good. I thought he missed a number of throws. He looked frustrated. DJ Moore looked frustrated. Their run game continued to, not be super effective, but I thought DeAndre Swift had his best game of the season by far with 16 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown, and a long touchdown, I believe. Tutu Atwell was the standout receiver for the Rams, 4 for 82. DJ Moore did score a touchdown, but only 22 yards in this game for him. So the Bears continue to struggle on offense for the most part, but their defense allowing them to stay in this game. Ultimately, they make enough plays in the end. Kyron Williams did score another touchdown. But yeah, just again, one of those games, man. A team coming off a big spot, winning a game that they shouldn't have won. They go on the road, they lose. That's just the NFL right now, man. I don't know. That's just the NFL. Caleb's still not looking great to me, though. Not looking like he was worth the first overall pick compared to Jaden Daniels. We'll talk about Jaden Daniels in a second, but 33-16 Tampa Bay over Philadelphia is the next game. This one was over from the jump. I could tell right away this game was going to be a shellacking. The Bucs went up 14-0 in the first quarter. Then it was 24-0 for the Bucs, which was pretty shocking in my opinion. I did end up putting a little bit of money on the Bucs money line before this game began, just because The Bucs, they were the healthier team despite having injuries in this game. The Eagles were missing their receivers, and I feel like without their receivers, they're just fundamentally a different team. Lane Johnson also was ruled out for this game, so no A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith, no Lane Johnson. I think a lot of people are going to panic about the Eagles after this game, but I think this is kind of like the Niners losing to the Vikings. I'm not all that worried. The Vikings, the Bucs, Vikings are a tough matchup for the Niners in terms of what we've seen the last 2 regular seasons. The Bucs are a tough matchup for the Eagles. That also being said, this was on the road. That also being said, the Niners injured, the Eagles injured. Some similarities here, in my opinion, just to kind of compare those games. But the Bucs are a good team. The Bucs are a good team. Bucs aren't a great team, but they're a good team. And when you're injured and when you have the deficiencies the Eagles have, they're able to take advantage. When your secondary isn't very good and they have easy advantages at wide receiver versus your cornerbacks and your secondary, and Baker can have time and Baker can hit his receivers in those soft zone coverages, he's going to make you pay and he's going to move the ball up and down the field. That's exactly what happened in the first half. The Eagles, they were playing their soft zone coverages. Baker was picking them apart. Godwin, Evans, Palmer, whatever he wanted. Irving, White underneath, getting checkdowns. They were just going up and down the field. 30 for 47, 347, 2 touchdowns. Probably the best quarterback performance of the week. Baker Mayfield, very steady in this game. Saquon did show up. He only had 10 carries for 84 yards. He did have a long run that set up a touchdown. I think the first of the day for Jalen Hurts to Paris Campbell. It might have been the second touchdown, but regardless, Saquon didn't get enough work in this one, and Nick Sirianni definitely deserves to be criticized there. But Vita Vea had a huge game. He had a sack in this game. I thought he was dominant. The Bucs actually had 6 total sacks, and Jalen Hurts continues to prove that he's a bit of a fraud right now. 18 for 30, 158 yards passing, and 1 touchdown. Very limited game for him. He struggled once again against Todd Bowles to kind of respond to the blitzing, respond to the zone blitzes, respond to the, all the different looks that Todd Bowles does bring. And Hurts once again struggled against this defense. That's just kind of what he does. But you look at the stats, this was a thorough beating. There's no comeback here. There's no real, Packer versus Viking vibe. It's 29 first downs to 16 for the Bucs. It's the same third down conversion rate. It's the Bucs 1 for 1 on fourth down. It's pretty much the same amount of rushing yards, 111, 113. It's 200 more passing yards, 334 to 114, 445 total yards to 227. That is an ass kicking. And then you talk about 6 sacks to 2 sacks. That's an ass kicking. You talk about all that stuff. The Bucs only had 3 penalties. The Eagles only had 5. So this was just an ass kicking, right? The Eagles fumbled a couple times. They actually didn't throw an interception. Jalen Hurts didn't throw an interception. But all the sacks, the holding on the ball for Jalen Hurts, the hesitation in the passing game, the lack of relying on Saquon Barkley without his receivers, which was a very odd game plan, very odd emphasis for the Eagles. Maybe they felt they were behind too early in this game to really do that, but I don't know. I think the score actually looks better than the performance, 33 to 16. I don't think it really does justice to how dominant the Bucs were in that game. But regardless, I still will say I like the win for the Bucs. That's a great win for the Bucs. They're 3-1 now. 3-1 now. The Eagles are 2-2, and the Eagles, I think they're better than 2-2. I think honestly they probably should have beat the Falcons, but this is a game that they definitely lost. They definitely lost. They looked more impressive than the score last week against the Saints. They looked less impressive than the score this week against the Bucs. But again, a lot of injuries to key players and a tough matchup for them on the road. Nick Sirianni continues to be an absolute clown show, though. He is a bum. Bengals at the Panthers, 34-24 for the Cincinnati Bengals. They look like the Bengals in this game. Their defense still showed some cracks. Still didn't have a great game, but their offense looks to be one of the elite units in the NFL these past couple of weeks. They dominated Washington. They did not punt, and despite the loss, and they dominated Carolina on the road, not at home. So that's nice to see. But both teams had the same amount of first downs. Both teams pretty much were the same on third down, but Carolina failed on 2 fourth down conversions. Cincinnati was well ahead in this game, which allowed the Panthers to kind of put up some garbage time yards and things like that. The yardage was pretty much the same at the end of the game, but I really felt like the Bengals pretty much got any conversion they wanted through the air on the ground. I thought they actually probably showcased the most amount of balance that we've seen from them all year, and that featured a Chase Brown script of 15 carries for 80 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and 2 tutties for Chase Brown, who looked like the feature back for the Bengals in this game, which was huge news for Chase Brown fantasy owners. He looked really good. He looked by far his best this season. He looked explosive. He was hitting the hole hard. And every game we've seen him from this season, other than New England, it feels like, every time he's touched the ball, he's been explosive and he's been able to get damage on the ground, kind of like a James Cook from the Bills. But Burrow, I thought, was very good. 22 for 31, 232, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 100.5 passer rating. Jamar Chase had one ridiculous long touchdown where he broke like 3 tackles and ran down the left sideline. 3 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. T. Higgins had a few catches as well to keep the chains moving. Deontay Johnson did have a good game for the Panthers, 7 for 83 and a touchdown. Andy Dalton wasn't bad, 25 for 40, 220, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Better than Bryce Young, I will say that. Chuba Hubbard had another good game, 18 for 104, 5.8, and 1 touchdown. Continues to be a problem for the Bengals. But I will say this about the Bengals. I think once they get their D tackles back, that will fix their defense to a major degree, because right now they're missing BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins, and that has been one of the biggest areas of deficiency for them. It's just the ability to stop the run right at the line of scrimmage, to be able to halt teams at the line of scrimmage. They're getting pushed back too much. I think the biggest flaw for them right now is their D tackle play, their D line play. I would actually like to see them make a trade or something, because I still believe in this team. I still believe in Burrow. I still believe in the offense, especially. And given how some of the other offenses in the AFC and the overall NFL look, if you have this good of an offense and you can mix in Chase Brown on the ground and things, and Zach Moss doesn't look too bad either, and you can have that type of play from the offense, if the defense can just be respectable, you're going to be in contention in this conference. So I think they probably need to make a trade or something. But I do like the vibes from the Bengals from this victory. Panthers overall, I will just say they just seem more respectable. Offense can actually move the ball. They can actually put up some points. They can actually make things fun, interesting. But the Bengals do come through with a 10-point victory, 34-24. One of the shockers of the day was the Broncos beating the Jets 10-9. In New York, nonetheless, not even in Denver. Both teams are now 2-2. Denver, a surprising 2-2. Denver manages to win a game in which they have 12 first downs and 3 third down conversions and 186 total yards. The Jets were the better team statistically, as they punted less. They had 100 more yards. They had 120 more passing yards. They were better on third down. But when you look at the Jets, they were 13 failures on third down and 1 failure on fourth down. They had more first downs than the Broncos, but it didn't really matter. The Jets were the Jets. 13 penalties for 90 yards. They punted 7 times. The Jets actually did not get sacked in this entire game. The Jets did not sack Denver 1 time in this game. Denver had 5 sacks in this game. Okay? Aaron Rodgers, 24 for 42, 225, and a 72 passer rating. No interceptions, no touchdowns, no big plays, nothing of the sort. The run game was not great. And Denver, I've said it a couple times already, Denver's defense is better than people think. They have been impressive. Now, this is not a game that I think Broncos fans should be crowning Bo Nix. He was 12 for 25 for 60 yards and a touchdown. It was raining. It was ugly. Javonte Williams did have a decent game, 16 for 77, 4.8 yards per carry. Hidden yardage in this one, I would say, but this was just a weird one. The Jets had plenty of opportunity to win it. They couldn't win it in the end. They missed a game-winning field goal from Greg Zuerlein that ended up losing them this game. Zuerlein actually did hit 3 field goals in this game, but he couldn't hit the 4th, which ultimately made them lose this game. Because if he hits that, they win 12-9, or 12-10. It would have been like ugly, but people would have been like, okay, at least the Jets won. But here, they drop a game they shouldn't drop. And so far, when you look at the Jets, they've beaten the Patriots and they've beaten the Titans. Like easily 2 of the 5 worst teams, maybe the 2 of the 3 worst teams in the league. They got killed against the Niners, and they got sort of embarrassed here. They lost to a rookie quarterback who had 60 yards. And this looked like a Zach Wilson performance. 10-9 loss with your defense allowing 160 or 186 yards. But again, this is Robert Saleh. This is poor coaching. This is bad execution on third down. This is 13 penalties, right? Like, that's why you lose the game. And I think the Jets, this is where Rodgers needs to understand, like, I need to be more aggressive. I need to make more plays. I understand it's raining outside, but I've got a great defense. I can afford to be a little bit more aggressive. I can afford to make some more plays. I guess his guys didn't step up as well. You know, Garrett Wilson, not even really on the stat sheet in this one, continues to struggle. This was a bad loss for the Jets, for sure. Not a good look. I'm not sure who they play next week, but it will be a big game for them. They play the Vikings, so good luck in that one. But hey, that would be the NFL for the Jets to beat the Vikings, would it not? Like, that would be classic NFL 2024. All right, so the next game, we've got the Commanders. This is now the afternoon slate, shellacking the Cardinals 42-14. This was a shocker. I mean, I thought the Cardinals would win this game, so I'm an idiot. The Commanders' offense right now, statistically speaking, is by far the best offense in the NFL. They're like borderline 2007 Patriots territory. I will say that they have played like the 4 worst defenses in the league, other than their own, arguably. Except for the Bucs, right? The one game that they sort of struggled, they played the Bucs defense, but they've played the Bengals. They did not punt. They scored at will. They've played the Cardinals, bottom defense in the league, although I thought they were playing better because they played well against the Lions, but didn't play well in other games. I would say that they played the Giants, who are not a very good defense. They didn't like dominate that game, but they were highly efficient. They had a lot of field goals, I think. And then, who am I missing, right? Cardinals, Giants, and Bengals. It's like 3 bottom 5 defenses in the league. So they've taken advantage of those defenses, but there's no doubt when you put up these sort of stats, 449 yards total, 216 rushing yards, 233 passing yards, 9 for 12 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down, 29 first downs, and 33 minutes of possession. They punted once, and they threw 1 interception. So they were stopped twice. Jaden Daniels, highly efficient in terms of completion percentage. He actually has the best completion percentage in a single season through 4 weeks that we've ever seen. That tops 2007 Patriots Tom Brady. That being said, Cliff Kingsbury is on that list twice, with Kyler Murray from 2021 also being on that list. So I want to give credit to Cliff Kingsbury because I was critical of Cliff Kingsbury before the season. I wasn't a huge fan of Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona outside of, maybe one season where I felt like he did a good job. But overall, I wasn't a huge fan of Cliff. And then, college last year, I wasn't super impressed with his USC offense. He comes to Washington here, and he's making everything easy for Jaden Daniels, and he's allowing Jaden Daniels to play how Jaden Daniels should play. Like, highly efficient, get the ball out fast, a lot of completions, like easy throws. And then Daniels takes advantage of his athleticism. And when the shots are there one-on-one, he hits them. And I think the biggest thing I can say about Daniels, which I would say is a comparison to Stroud last year, is he's so mechanically clean. He's very consistently accurate. He puts the ball where he needs to put the ball. There's very rarely a throw that I've seen from Daniels that is off target. So I think his completion numbers to a certain degree are fake because a lot of the throws are easy, but at the same time, a lot of the throws are legit. Like, he very rarely misses throws. So the offense is humming right now. I mean, the run game is far more impressive than I would have thought. The offensive line is far more impressive than I would have thought. Brian Robinson, 21 carries, 101 yards here. Connor actually had a good day, 18 for 104 and a touchdown. That's 5.8 yards per carry, but it didn't really matter. I thought that the Cardinals defense or the Cardinals offense was putrid. Kyler Murray did nothing, 16 for 142 and a touchdown. Kyler, was under duress a lot. He was getting sacked a lot, hit a lot. He got sacked 4 times. Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, the interior of the Commanders really wrecked shop against the Cardinals. Kyler's been disappointing the last couple of weeks. He had an amazing Rams game, but otherwise he's been pretty disappointing this year. Terry McLaurin had 1 touchdown, 7 catches, 52 yards. Marvin Harrison had 1 touchdown, 5 catches, 45 yards. But honestly, it just felt like the Commanders had the ball all day. They were getting first downs at will. They were running the ball. They were throwing the ball. They were, screening it. They were, every time they needed to play, they were making it. And the Cardinals just weren't. The Cardinals just weren't, man. So Yeah, this was a dominant game, 42-14, and they put up 15 in the fourth quarter to truly put through a statement against the Cardinals. Cardinals have come back down to earth. They're 1-3. They, looked good in week 1 for half the game against the Bills. The other half was terrible. They looked fantastic against the Rams, but otherwise they've looked terrible. Like, I thought they looked okay against the Lions defensively, but the offense was kind of underwhelming. The offense, to a certain degree, just hasn't been doing enough. Like, you're playing the Commanders defense, you only put up 14 points. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if the Cardinals lost 42-28 here, but they lost 42-14. They couldn't even put up 20 points against the worst defense in the league through the first 3 weeks of the season. So that's really disappointing from my perspective. That's where I've got to worry because, if the Cardinals want to be competitive, they've got to score some darn points, bro. You're not going to win many games on the Cardinals only scoring 14 points. So shout out to Jaden Daniels, highly efficient quarterback play right now. He's been fantastic. And the Commanders are 3-1, the leader of the NFC East right now. And I think we have to have a legitimate conversation about Washington. I think they can win this division, not really because I think they're an amazing team. Maybe they are. I don't really know yet, but I want to see them play a little bit better defenses first. But that being said, their NFC East, the Eagles are hurt. The Eagles are inconsistent. The Eagles have a terrible coach. The Cowboys, yeah, they've got a quarterback and a receiver, and their offense isn't bad, but their defense beat up DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons. Their defense looked terrible against the Giants. If the Commanders play them right now, I think the Commanders are putting up 40 on the Dallas Cowboys right now, the way the Cowboys defense looks. So Commanders, are they legit? Potentially. Are they worst to first? Potentially. Do we really know why? I think it's just because their offense is humming. Their offense knows what they are. They're a quick passing game, great after the catch. They take their shots when they're there, and they're very balanced, and they've got a quarterback that's accurate, and he can move. And their defense, they're playing and feeding off of it. I don't think they're a very good defense, but they played well today. Patriots and 49ers, 30-13. I streamed this game. The Niners dominated this game from start to finish. There wasn't really a lot going for the Patriots here. The Patriots look like the worst team in the league in this game, to be honest, which is saying a lot. But the Niners, you just go through the stats, 19 first downs to 12, 148 rushing yards to 73, 283 passing yards to 143, 431 yards, which seems to be the Niners have 400 yards no matter if they win or lose in every game. They had 6 sacks in this game against the Patriots. And, as a Pats fan, I'm frustrated in terms of, I don't know why Drake May is not playing. Jacoby is not playing well. He threw the ball straight to the defense. Fred Warner picked it off. The Patriots' offensive line makes their offense so frustrating to watch because I actually don't think the scheme is that bad. I don't think the players are that bad. I think the O-line and the quarterback play, and in combination with both of those things, is pretty underwhelming. I don't think Jacoby has been awful. I just don't think he can make a lot of plus plays. And given the state of the offensive line, it's really hard to have a quarterback who's a game manager without any protection and without any sort of consistency up front. The offensive line in New England is borderline embarrassing. It's to the degree of how would you actually let this happen? How did you enter an NFL season with this bad of an offensive line? They seriously need to think about adding veterans to this O-line to make them better and respectable. Dave Andrews left this game. The Niners front played really well. I mean, Nick Bosa played really well. Malik Collins continues to be one of the best D tackles I've seen all year. He's been great in every game. Javon Hargrave, I know that he's a great pass rusher, but a blessing in disguise for the Niners might be that they can take him off the field on first and second down because their run defense in this game was a lot better. And I would say overall, their run defense without Hargrave on the field might actually improve because he's not a very good run defender. There was this guy, it starts with an O. He has a long, weird name. Number 91 on the Niners looked fantastic. He was terrorizing the Patriots. Some depth player, but he looked fantastic. The Niners had Fred Warner leave this game at one point. Kittle leave this game at one point. But the one constant for the Niners, man, Brock Purdy looks unreal. Honestly, Brock Purdy looks like a top quarterback in this league. His downfield passes in this game to Jawan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel, all contributing in that regard. George Kittle made an amazing triple coverage touchdown grab Jennings continues to be a baller. Debo looked like Debo in this game. Mason did his thing. And Ayuk looked a little bit better, although he wasn't super constant. I think a lot of the time he was covered by Gonzalez, so that makes sense. But the Patriots defense, they made a couple plays here. Purdy made a bad interception to Peppers in the end zone that he shouldn't have thrown. But otherwise, Purdy was great under pressure. He scrambled when he needed to early in the game for first downs. He was very patient. He was very poised. He was very accurate. I mean, Purdy looked amazing in this game. I think that if they're getting this Purdy for the rest of the season, even if they're a little bit worse on defense, a little bit more injured than usual, this team's going to be in it to the end because Brock Purdy looks freaking good, man. So, and the Patriots defense is not a slouch. I mean, they're not amazing right now, but they're not a bad defense. I thought the Niners looked like the Niners, though. Their secondary, I thought, pretty much did what you would expect. Lenore had a very good game here in this one. So 30-13 Niners, it was pretty predictable. That's what we expected. The Raiders, 20-16 in a kind of a somewhat shocking win over the Browns. The Browns had all the advantage in the world despite playing in Las Vegas. No Max Crosby or Devontae Adams, and the Raiders are 2-2, and they beat the Browns. I mean, the Browns are borderline disgusting, and what I mean by that is they're embarrassing. They're bag over the head television. This team is a piece of donkey doo-doo. They are awful. They had a chance to win this game at the end, but Deshaun Watson couldn't come through. Shocking. I do wonder when this team is just going to give up and they're going to want Jameis Winston in there, or the rest of the team is just going to give up. They lost to a team that had their quarterback throw for 130 yards and a 73 passer rating and not a single touchdown. The Raiders had 268 yards and they won and they scored 20 points. The Browns didn't score a single touchdown, or they did score one touchdown on offense and they scored one touchdown on defense. I didn't really watch this game. I'm not even going to lie, but I did see the end. And of course, Watson got sacked to end the game. So I don't want the Browns fans to attack me for this one, but I just don't know how you guys can stand up for this guy at this point. And I don't know how you can stand up for this team. The defense didn't play bad. They didn't play a dominant game, but the Raiders are missing so many players. I mean, they're missing Diablo. They're missing Crosby. They're missing Kuntz. They're missing Adams. They're missing their right tackle. How many guys you need to be missing? The Browns not able to take advantage of that is just absolute signature of a terrible football team. The Browns will be picking in the top 10. Their quarterback is a disaster. Their offense is a disaster. Their offensive line is bad. They can't consistently run the ball, although they did run the ball on a per carry basis. Jerome Ford had 5.8 yards per carry. But I mean, what are you going to do with your team when Blake Whiteheart is leading your team in receiving? I don't know. Chiefs and the Chargers, 17-10 for the Chiefs. I watched pretty much the entirety of this game. This game was pretty boring for the most part. The Chiefs did win with 16 first downs. 9 of them came on third down, which is not good. And I think if the Chargers had a little bit of a healthier team, they probably would have won. The Chargers actually could have won regardless, but they failed a fourth down late in the game that could have allowed them to maybe win. But again, this is another game where the Chiefs looked pretty bad, especially on offense. Their defense looked the part. Again, they look elite. But they're playing a Charger offense that has injured tackles, no real threats at receiver. Ladd McConkey had a good game, 5 catches for 67 and a touchdown. Looks like a good draft pick by the Chargers. Not too surprised. I liked him in the draft. Herbert was fine in this game, 16 for 27, 179, a touchdown. But everything is hard on him. The system is not fantastic for getting separation. It just feels like every throw, every drop back is he's making a dicey decision, a contested catch. Very rarely is a guy actually open when he's dropping back. Their run game struggled to run. I mean, Dobbins had 2.3 yards per carry, which is not what they want. I think the biggest stories coming from this game is Worthy played well for the Chiefs. He had a 55-yard touchdown in the second quarter. He had a third down conversion later in the game to secure the victory for the Chiefs. He had a couple of key plays in this one. Mahomes was okay, but he did throw an interception that actually injured Rashee Rice. He tried to make a tackle on the play, Patrick Mahomes did, and he ended up bending the knee of Rashee Rice to the degree where I think he tore his ACL. So if the Chiefs don't have Rashee Rice, this team's in big time trouble. Like, I don't know where their offensive production is going to come from. He was by far their best playmaker on offense this year, looked like their best receiver. I'm not saying it's karma, but I think it is, to be honest. Kareem Hunt did look great. Like, Kareem Hunt was the story of this game. 14 carries, 69 yards, 4.9 yards per carry. He became the lead back in this game. So if you have him in fantasy or if he's on your waiver wire, definitely worth the pickup. Like, he looked pretty good, actually. He looked like kind of like a couple years ago Kareem Hunt. Not quite 2017, 2018 Kareem Hunt, but pretty good. Like, not bad. He was doing everything. He was catching it. He was running it. Mahomes, again, like, not terrible. I thought Kelsey had a good game, but it wasn't like, again, just not a super impressive win. Like, I don't really know what else to say. It's just like defense. They grinded it out. Mahomes didn't make a lot of mistakes, although he made one. They punted a lot. Like, they punted 4 times. They made their defense make a lot of stops. They did. And they just hung around and they outclassed the Chargers at the end. Like, the fourth quarter came, and as Ben put it in the chat, like, the Chiefs were just better in the fourth quarter, and that's what it came down to. They attempted a 65-yard field goal. Butker missed. Dicker actually missed a 55-yarder. They could have won this game if they get, a fourth down and a field goal. And that's kind of what it came down to. Like, the Chargers just not good enough. They don't have a lot of talent. They're injured. Like, no Joey Bosa, no Joe Alt. Like, missing key pieces. Now the Chiefs are missing Rashee Rice. I don't know how their offense is going to work moving forward. Kelsey looks slow, but he actually made more plays than he's made all year, and that was a big difference maker. So that was Sunday, guys. Went through all the games. Sunday Night Football, crazy game, crazy shocker in terms of the result. Sunday, not too crazy. I think our picks did better this week, but not perfect. Definitely some games that we need to learn from. I think the Commanders result is a big one. The Niners look like the Niners again. The Bucs continue to dominate the Eagles. The Texans stay on track. The Vikings continuing to prove the world wrong. But not too many crazy results here. I actually, the Sunday Night Football might have been the craziest, a 25-point win by the Ravens. So you guys let me know what you thought in the comment section below. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching this reaction and recap. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.